Now, I'm going to be sharing in a few minutes a ministry that I actually did when we began with the online content. So this is probably about a month ago, and I wasn't sure on our schedule for that weekend was Will, and I wasn't sure whether we would be able to get everything sorted in time. It was a real push. We had to get everything ready in a few days, and so I made a recording of a ministry at that time, and as it turned out, I wasn't able to get it uploaded because it was too big. And I thought I would actually share that with you today. So I'm going to start with a Bible reading, and then we'll cut away to that ministry. And it's a ministry that I did in a little chapel that's here on Mount Amanzi. It's a little bit echoey as far as the audio is concerned, but I believe it's a great word and it's relevant for the time in which we are living. So the reading that I want to read is Psalm 46 and the first 5 verses or so. And it says, a song upon Alamoth, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear. Though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof, Selah, there is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. Beautiful, isn't it? And so we're going to cut away to that ministry that I recorded about a month ago, and so enjoy that now, and may God bless you through it. Now, we read a moment ago from Psalm 46, and it is from that psalm that I would like to share a few thoughts. I think one of the characteristics of this particular psalm and the verses that we read is this sense of contrast. The first few verses are full of chaos, full of a sense of danger. I mean, the words are incredibly graphic. The sense of, the mountains being cast into the sea, the swelling, the noise, the rage. It's almost cataclysmic, as if the world is, literally falling apart. And yet, in the midst of that sense of catastrophe, there is this wonderful theme that, God is with us, that we will not be moved, that He will help us. And there's that lovely little phrase, that before the break of dawn or at the break of dawn, at maybe what might seem to be the last moment, but God will come through and help us. So to sort of sum up, this psalm may be characterized as a psalm that is all about finding strength and refuge in times of trouble. In other words, in the chaos of life, whether it's war or virus or financial trouble or relationship trouble or whatever it is that can afflict us, that in the midst of all of these circumstances and the chaos of life, we can find that God is our refuge. As I said a moment ago, the scenes described in verses 1 and 3, or 1, 2, 3, are massive, overwhelming, suggesting circumstances that are catastrophic. And yet, in the midst of all of this graphic drama and tension, there is a theme that the city of God, the people of God, dwells secure. I love the way it says, she, speaking of the city of God, she shall not be moved. Don't you love that? Shall not be moved. Yeah. There is a sense of you have been planted, you have been placed. You may be shaken, you may be troubled, you may have some testing circumstances, but you are on the rock. It reminds me a little bit of what Jesus said when he told the story of the two builders. You may recall that, the one who built on the sand and the one who built on the rock, and how the floods and the winds and the rain came, and the house that was built on the rock stood firm, while the other one collapsed. So as these sweeping scenes of chaos and disaster are held before us, there is this little moment in the psalm where we come across this word Selah. It's a very interesting little expression. It almost sort of implies an instruction to the musicians or an instruction to the readers. It's almost like a scene change. So if it was music, we would say that the first few verses are characterized by drums and drama and shrieking instruments, and it's loud and it's chaotic and it's frightening. And then there's this Selah. And it's almost as if now the music should become gentle, pastoral, almost as if you're on a sort of a summer holiday listening to the birds singing in the trees. And there is in and after this Selah, this wonderful little statement, there is a river. I love that. There is a river, the streams of which shall make glad the city of God. Now, that statement is remarkable for a number of reasons. First of all, we're talking about Jerusalem. And one of the features of Jerusalem is that it is not near any river or any lake or any sea. It's a good number of kilometers or miles inland in the Judean hills. And yet the writer here, speaking, I believe, prophetically, says there is a river. It has often been said that many of the great cities of the world, the great capitals of the world, have been built on rivers. We can think of London and the Thames and Paris and the Seine and the Danube and the Nile and some of the great rivers of the world. And yet the greatest city of all, the city of God, is not built on a natural river, but the psalmist here says, there is a river. What sort of river is this? Well, I think the first thing to say is that this is clearly a spiritual river, but there is a day coming when we read the prophetic scriptures, and we read in passages like Ezekiel 47 and that remarkable picture of the river that flows from the throne. There is a day coming when I believe there is actually going to be a physical river that flows. And I love this thought that, and in fact I've seen this myself, that when you go underneath the Western Wall, this is where the Temple Mount is in Jerusalem, and you go and walk underground,
They call this the rabbi's tunnels, if I recall. And one of the things that strikes you as you are walking underground in these tunnels, and especially as you get toward the sort of really into the Temple Mount itself, is they're dripping with water, quite literally. As you rub your shirt or your jacket up against the walls, you get wet. And there almost seems to be a cistern, a reservoir of water that is building up in the Temple Mount. It's almost anticipating that day when the feet of Jesus touch the Mount of Olives and he comes in triumphal procession into Jerusalem through the eastern gate, and he sets up his throne on the Temple Mount. It's anticipating that day that from that Temple Mount will flow a river that will bring life, a river that will bring healing. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So I find this quite remarkable, this sense of contrast between the tumult, the noise, the tension of those first few verses, and then these verses after the Selah, which talk about the river and the way in which the streams of this river make glad. They make glad. They bring joy. They bring blessing to the city of God. And I want to maybe just sort of develop this thought a little bit in the sense of the nature of this river. And this river that is from God, that represents the life and the presence of God. There are a number of features that it has. And the first is that wherever this river flows, and we're particularly getting this out of Ezekiel 47 and passages like that, wherever it flows, it brings life. Now, just reflect a moment about the sort of contrast of this psalm. The first few verses, full of chaos, stress, darkness, stuff going on. And then these verses, which talk about the river of God, the river that brings life. So in the midst of a world that is in panic and chaos, in the midst of a world which is stressing out and freaking out, there is a river that flows from the presence of God, and a river that brings life. Life to our troubled hearts, life to our troubled minds, life to our spirits. It is a life-giving river. I think one of the other things that we learn about this river, again, particularly from the passages in Ezekiel, is that it is a river to swim in. And that there are these different degrees to which you can engage with the river. You can go into the river ankle deep, knee deep, thigh deep. You can swim in it. And there's no doubt in my mind that the degree to which you engage with the river will be the degree to which you benefit and enjoy its blessings. And when we live in the world that we're living in today, full of all the fear and the anxiety and the chaos and the stress, if you're only ankle deep in the river of God, you're going to still be affected and struggle with some of what's going on. And so it's almost a motivation when you see trouble, when you see all of the sort of virus stuff and people panic buying and clearing out the shelves and wondering what's going to happen in the future. It's almost a motivation for you to get more into the river, to say, I want to get not just ankle deep or knee deep, but I want to swim in this river because it's going to, take me deeper with God. It's going to keep me in God. It's going to help me to have the right perspective in terms of where we are and what's going on in the world today. And it reminds me of the thought that you can know God at different levels. I remember years ago teaching and preaching on those verses in 1 John chapter 2. I think it's from verse 12 through to 14, where it talks about the children and the young men and the fathers. And the children are also described as knowing God. But the fathers, who are, you could say, the mature ones, are described as knowing Him who is from the beginning. Just think about that a moment. For you as a human being to be able to know or to grasp something of the nature and the bigness and the glory of the eternal God. That's a remarkable thing. We can know God as little children, where, like a child knows the parents who feed it and wipe its nappy or clean its nappy and provide and look after it. And there is a sense spiritually in which you can know God like that. But then there is a sense in which, in the midst of the trouble and the chaos and the violence of the world in which we live, you can know the one who is from the beginning, the one who sits in eternity, who has in his hand not just time, but life itself. And we are hidden with him. What a thought. And so this picture of the river implies that you can know God at different levels. You can engage with the river at different levels. And I encourage you in this time of stress and drama and chaos that you push into the river. Know him in the deepest and the most amazing way you can. The other thing about the river is this statement here that is in the Psalm 46, where it says that the streams of which make glad the city of our God. And I've always loved that thought that, we can be glad. That when everyone else is moaning, everyone else is complaining, everyone else is sort of freaking out and saying, oh, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? That we can be a people of joy. That in the darkness we can be light. That in the anger and the words we can be speakers of peace. That we can be glad. That we can shine, that we can witness. And one of the things that I think this season brings to us as a church and as a community is a fantastic opportunity to be witnesses. To be witnesses to our neighbors, to be witnesses to our colleagues that we work with, and to be those who go through this singing a song, giving God praise, making the world know around us that we have a reason to be hopeful, that we have a reason to smile, because we are drinking and we are living in the river, the streams of which make glad the city of God. Again, just a little thought, the way I love to look at words and what is written, and just the notion of not just a stream, but multiple streams. And that in the midst of these moments and these seasons, we can find many streams of blessing in the presence of God. I hope most of you got that letter that Anne and I sent out a few days ago, just announcing the closure of our services at Millbrook. And in some of my closing comments, I referenced a message that I heard many years ago entitled Eagle Christians. And if I remember, the preacher was a man called Ern Baxter. And I think he became quite world famous for just that one message. But in the message, Ern contrasted the way in which different birds respond to stormy weather. And he said that when storms come, you see the nesting birds, the little sort of tree birds and ground birds, the sort of swallows of robins and finches and wagtails and, the chickens and the poultry. They look for shelter. They hide. But he said the eagle gets excited because it knows that in the context of that storm, it is going to experience winds and currents and power in a way that it doesn't normally get to experience. And I find that so beautiful because we as Christians should not be those who are running from the storm. We are not going into hiding. We're not going into a place of panic and terror and saying, what's happening? But in fact, we're putting out our wings and we're getting excited because what we're sensing in the Spirit is a degree of the power and the presence of God that maybe we've not experienced before. And we're sensing, here comes a moment. Here comes an opportunity. Here comes a defining season where we as the church and the people of God, instead of scattering, can pull together. Instead of complaining, can actually start praising. Instead of running away from stuff, can actually say, what can I do? How can I make a difference? Instead of giving less, give more. Instead of being weaker, be stronger. And in fact, rise to the occasion and the opportunity that we have in front of us. This Psalm 46, feels a bit like that to me. That we have the chaos of the first few verses. That's a bit of the way it is in the world today. Stock markets plunging, people crying and wondering where and what is going on. But the city of God, the people of God, shall not be moved. Our God will help us, and that right early. There is a river, the streams of which make glad the city of our God. I trust that this will bless you and that you'll take this word with you throughout your day and as you go about your business during the next few days, the week ahead, that you will remember we are not alone, we are not abandoned, but our God is with us and He is helping us. God bless you. Have an awesome day. Thank you so much.